we are joined right now by a fantastic guest, Dede Hill, who is with the Schuyler Center for Analysis and Advocacy in New York. Welcome, Dede.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited that you're here to talk with us about hope. There has been an Empire State campaign for childcare for some time, and it is winning. We are winning advancements in childcare. And for people who are listening, childcare, even if you don't have a young child, affects everyone. Childcare is infrastructure. Parents need childcare in order to be able to go to work. Kids need childcare in order to be able to learn and thrive and be excellent future leaders. Childcare workers need fair pay so they can stay in the profession. And businesses need childcare too, because guess what? 3/4 of moms are in the labor force, and those businesses need moms in the labor force in order to stop supply chain disruptions and keep their businesses going. And the return on investment of childcare is also high. For every $1 that taxpayers put into childcare, people get back a minimum of $7 later due to fewer grade repetitions, less reliance on other long-term supports, and all kinds of benefits from access to early education that benefit everybody, whether you have a child or not. So, with that wonderful introduction, if I do say so myself, New York recently announced historic investments in childcare. Yay! And we know it's taken lots of organizing to get there. So we're wondering, for people who aren't in New York, can you tell us a little bit about how you did it? How did the Empire State Campaign for Childcare work with parents, with caregivers, with childcare providers, and lawmakers to get childcare as the priority that it is?
I'm so glad you asked. It has been a long journey, and it is exciting to be talking about our journey at this moment of real promise. So the Empire State Campaign for Childcare is New York's statewide campaign for universal childcare. We became a campaign in 2017, and we actually emerged at a moment of real challenge. We were at that moment right around this time of year facing cuts to childcare assistance, which is the principal means of supporting low-income families to afford childcare. And that was at a moment when the program was starved, when we were running wait lists. It was funded at about 1/4 of what it is funded today. And so sort of facing those cuts, we realized that our advocacy wasn't working. Something was wrong. And so the Empire State Campaign was born. And from the outset, we realized it had to be a campaign that was singularly focused on childcare, and it had to have in every leadership position and at every table, we needed to have childcare providers, the educators that that are the heart and soul of childcare, and we needed to have parents. And so that is our birth story. And then sort of 9 years later, we have more than 100 organizational members. We have more than 3,000 supporters. All of our steering committee is co-led by a child care educator. All of our committees are led by either educators or parents. About 5 years ago, our campaign shifted from a campaign for sort of childcare affordability to a campaign for universal childcare and achieving a thriving wage for the childcare workforce. So we changed the goalpost, and then we called upon our state leaders to change the goalpost too, and they were up for it.
Yeah, because they're hearing from their constituents that childcare is essential. Childcare is just important as bridges and roads that we need to drive on to get to work, because we cannot go to work without childcare, and kids cannot thrive without childcare. I'm so glad that you brought up the importance of living wages for childcare workers as part of the fabric of the childcare system. Sometimes people don't realize a couple really important things. That the childcare system is between a rock and a hard place. Parents cannot afford to pay anymore. Childcare already costs in most states more than college. And we cannot afford to pay childcare workers any less. Childcare workers are some of the lowest paid workers of anybody in the United States of America. So the system itself is broken. And one of the big things that studies have shown that's necessary to have high quality early education is a consistent early educator. That would be your childcare provider. And people come into childcare work with love and joy and education in their hearts and then get pushed out because they can't afford to pay for their own childcare for their own kids. And so can you talk a little bit about how you wove in the importance of fair pay for childcare workers into your campaign efforts?
Yeah, I mean, and I'm happy to say that's really been a consistent theme from the beginning, and I think in large part because we've had childcare educators at our tables, for years, and they have educated all of us about the challenges of keeping their doors open and keeping their seats filled. In New York, because wages are so low, the biggest challenge that we hear from child care programs is keeping fully staffed. And so most of them are not fully staffed. And as a result, that has deepened our capacity crisis, because if you are not fully staffed, you cannot fill every seat. And that leads to even more wait lists and more challenges for families to find care. So yeah, one of the core pillars of our campaign is raising the workforce wages. And this year, the key ask, and this is one low light in a otherwise lots of good news, is that right now, as we enter sort of the middle of budget negotiations here in New York, the governor did not propose anything for the childcare workforce. So we are really leaning into that important component of this movement towards universal childcare, and asking for the state to create a compensation fund, and that fund would then drive compensation supplements to every member of the childcare workforce. That way we can raise workforce wages without asking parents to pay a penny more, because as you said, many parents are paying tuition still. We have not yet achieved a publicly funded universal childcare system. So as we are on that road, and while many parents are paying tuition out of pocket, we need to raise workforce wages without raising tuition for parents.
I'm so glad you brought up that budget negotiations are happening, because I was going to ask you about that. We have about 5 minutes left. I have 500 questions for you. But budget negotiations, they're happening in New York State. What can people do to help support childcare in those budget negotiations?
Yeah, so we are in the thick of it. Just for like a little context, I mean, budget negotiations, they kicked off at the beginning of January, and they kicked off in really fine fashion. Our Governor Hochul, standing alongside New York City Mayor Mamdani, announced really historic investments in childcare in her executive budget, which is just a proposed budget, but it really started strong. And she proposed $1.7 billion. It's the largest, single largest investment in early childhood education in New York State history. It would really expand access to our child care assistance program that supports low-income families. Also would expand pre-K for 4-year-olds around the state by 2028. It would expand 3K, which is just getting started outside of New York City, and also launch some pilot projects, 2Care in New York City, which is really exciting, and then some community-based pilot projects outside of New York City. So really off to this strong start. the missing component is the workforce. And so what we're really asking for parents and educators and community members and all New Yorkers to be calling for our state leaders to adopt all of the amazing proposals in the governor's budget and build, right? We want to, if we really are serious about achieving universal childcare, we cannot neglect the childcare workforce. So, so please talk, sing the praises to your kids' first educators. I know I still, and it's been a long time for me, I still remember all the things that my childcare educators taught me and made me a better parent. And they deserve to be paid a thriving wage.
100% agree. I want to talk a little bit, and we only have 3 minutes left, about New York City Mayor Mamdani, a household name. We hear about him from moms all across the country, even outside New York State. Can you tell us a little bit about how this campaign and this win and his win on childcare is helping to move forward the childcare conversation, both in New York State and across the country?
Yeah, I mean, I there's no way to, I mean, we are truly in a stars are aligned moment here in New York State. To have a wildly popular New York City mayor make childcare one of his like top 3 priorities, both, in his campaign and now, his first few months in office. I think it was day 8 that he stood next to our governor and made these, very historic proposals around childcare. So it's been fantastic, I think. But there are other ingredients. We also have in Governor Hochul. She has been a longtime champion of childcare. So that's sort of followed her throughout her career and her first term as as governor, excuse me. So, I think also it's important to acknowledge that it's New York parents and providers and advocates, and campaigns like the Empire State Campaign for Childcare. We haven't been sitting around idly waiting for this moment. We helped to create this moment.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so we paved the way, we moved the goalpost, and now we have these leaders who are helping us achieve our goal.
And one of the things I think it's important for listeners to hear that it wasn't a goal that was achieved overnight. It took at least 9 years, almost a decade, to build that momentum. And that's important to note because we are in a time, people, of persistence. We are not going to likely at the federal level get the solutions we need overnight. We've seen Donald Trump and Republicans in Congress stand up barriers against expanding access to childcare, and in fact try to get rid of Head Start, which is a proven spectacular program for our economy, for our businesses, and oh yes, for families too. And so persistence is the name of the game. So we have about 2 seconds left. What do you have to say about persistence? Is it important?
It is absolutely absolutely important. And we shouldn't be afraid to ask for what we need, even in this moment of peril and threat. And we should really be demanding a lot from our state leaders to stand up, protect families, and set them up to thrive.
Thank you so much, Dede Hill with the Schuyler Center for Analysis and Advocacy. Yes, I'll say that eventually. For the Empire State Campaign for Childcare, the winning campaign. Thank you so much for being on.
Thank you so much.